Okay, we'll just wait a couple minutes here before we get started. I'll just make sure that I can share my screen here. Okay, I think I have everything I need. All right. And turn it on and go like this. So today we are going to finish the section on hydrating the athlete. So I'm just going to put that up here and get this going here for us. We're going to bounce back and forth. I have quite a few little videos for us to watch just to help enhance what's going on here. Okay. Hydrating the athlete. And just do this. And like this. Okay. All right. I'll just wait a minute here for a couple more people to sign on. So I'll wait about 30 more seconds. We do have a lot to cover today. We will be taking the full 45 minutes. But we're getting close to the end. I have, I think, 2 more sections that I'm going to divide this up into. We talk about competition and nutritional labels and how to be a coach of an athlete in regards to nutrition. So we have to go through those types of things. But for today, we are going to talk about hydration. Now, you have a worksheet on this. I've already shared that with you, so you should have received it about 10 minutes ago or so. And really, these worksheets are more just regurgitation of the notes. So you read the notes and you answer the worksheets. It's not really all that difficult. Other than the very last question, that's a logging question. So you're logging what you drink for the day. So you're going to have to give yourself a day to do that. So don't expect you're going to be able to do that in 30 seconds, right? You have to log for a day. So I would just choose tomorrow, get the log part over with, and then there's a couple of questions associated with it. Okay. So the hydration worksheet will be due on Monday. Remember, we don't have class tomorrow. That's why we have class today. Hydrating the athlete is due Monday, and then we'll have a quiz. I'm only going to put it over 2 days because it doesn't seem to help to put it over 3 days. So I'm going to put it over 2 days. So I'll open it on Tuesday, but it'll close Wednesday at midnight. Okay. All right. That being said, let us go on. We're going to start talking about water. So water. Remember, everything that's underlined here, that is part of what's in your booklet. You could fill it in right as we go through this. So adequate hydration is crucial to athletic performance. Water makes up about 60% of our body weight, as it does, like every cell has cytoplasm, which has lots of water in it. So that's for all organisms. All organisms on Earth require water. Water's the most, so that's something to highlight there. Water is the most essential nutrient for top athletic performance. Okay, so we're just going to watch just a real short video on the importance of water for an athlete. Alrighty. Hydrate before we exercise. Important to accommodate for our thirst. Water for less than 60 minutes. More than 60 minutes, sports drink. Know how much you sweat. That'll tell you how much water you need. have to be cognizant of that. Okay, so let me just cancel it. So this one over here now. Okay, next, just go back to my sharing here. Okay, so water, most essential nutrient. Okay, we need to be drinking appropriately. So we have hydrating versus dehydrating liquids, and then we kind of have the ones that are in the middle. So hydrating liquids are the ones that replenish water that's lost. Okay, best choices for this: water, of course, fruit infused. There's a lot of different types of containers you can get. So you see that when you go to fancy hotels or whatever, they have fruit infused where they've added cucumbers or lemon to the water. You can make a pitcher of water and just cut some fruit up and put it in there and do that. Sports drinks, milk, juice without added sugar, non-caffeinated teas. The biggest culprit for a dehydrating liquid is anything with alcohol in it. So alcohol, actually, there's a little hormone that helps us maintain our water concentration in our blood. Alcohol shuts that hormone down. So that hormone doesn't work very well. We end up peeing out quite a bit. So we increase our rates of urination, which causes us to become dehydrated. So alcohol is the biggest culprit. Sugary drinks can reduce our absorption of water. So we want to limit our intake of sugary drinks. So pop, hot chocolate, energy drinks, smoothies. Small amounts of caffeine don't seem to have a huge impact on our level of dehydration. You just don't want to overdo the caffeine. Okay, diet records. So this is what I was talking about here. I made up a log for you to go, that's on the last question of your worksheet where you'll work through this. Okay. All right, bottled water versus tap water. So this is another outcome in the curriculum. So what should we be drinking? Well, here's the thing. Both provide water. Both don't really provide any other source of nutrients for us. So it's H2O. The only reason that bottled water might be a beneficial choice is that local tap water is not safe. So if it's been deemed that the local tap water hasn't been disinfected properly, then bottled water would be your alternative. As far as being able to carry water around with you, there's a plethora of different water bottles that you can purchase that are reusable. And I see that in the classroom with you guys bringing your water bottles to class. Reasons not to use bottled water. Bottled water is expensive. Bottled water, so that plastic that makes up the bottle requires ridiculous amounts of fossil fuels in order to make, and it adds to pollution. So this number here is 86. I'm going to show you a video where it says only 23%, which is 87 not recycled. Only 23% of water bottles end up being recycled. The rest of them add to our pollution. So we're just going to watch just a little video on bottled water. Oops. Safe to drink. A lot of bottled water comes from tap water. This is a penny from the States. 33.6 million tons of plastic. Plastic comes from our fossil fuels. I know there are some people who claim that tap water tastes awful. And if it's well water, there is a possibility, but you can buy a filtration system, like just a Brita filter, to try to filter out the extra stuff that's causing the water maybe not to taste as good as what you would like. But city water is pretty well filtered. And I know they did a taste test I saw on the news several years ago with people from New York City. They were testing bottled water versus tap water. People couldn't tell the difference. They said they could until they had a blind taste test. They couldn't tell the difference. So just fill up your reusable water bottle and just take water from your tap. Okay, way better for the environment and way cheaper for you. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay. So why hydrate? So our whole point of talking today is, of course, it's athletic, right? We're looking at athletics. When we exercise, we lose water. So we need to hydrate. Water maintains our core body temperatures of 37 degrees Celsius. Having water increases our performance, right? If we become dehydrated, we don't perform well. Reduces the risk of heat illness and dehydration, okay? So because we're reducing our body temperature. It also helps to prevent gastric cramping, which is abdominal cramps, if we have enough water. And it helps to prevent fatigue. Okay, so we can get really tired, our blood volume gets to be too low, our heart has to work harder, we get more fatigued. Okay. We also want to be cognizant when we're doing exercise, when we're going outside, what the conditions are outside. Hot temperatures, we're going to sweat more, and when we sweat more, we're losing more water, so we have to replace more water. So we have to make sure that we have enough water to replace water lost when it's hot outside. When it's high humidity, so high humidity means there's a lot of liquid in the air. So what happens with that, we sweat. So if it's hot and humid, and that can happen in Vancouver, often happens in Toronto, because Toronto's right next to the one of the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario. So the air can be really, really humid. So we sweat to cool down, but the sweat's not evaporating, so we're not actually cooling down. So our body keeps sending this message to sweat more and sweat more and sweat more. So we end up losing more and more water. So when it's high humidity and hot, we have to make sure we are rehydrating a lot more often than we would in a lower humid environment. So dehydration. So water is lost when we sweat, like we just talked about. Water is lost when we breathe. So part of the process of cellular respiration, when we make energy, we need glucose and we need oxygen. That's what we take in, but what we release is carbon dioxide, but we also release water vapor. So every time we breathe out, we're breathing out water vapor. And then of course we lose water through urination. So we start to become dehydrated when we lose about 1% of our body weight. So let's say you weigh 170 pounds. If you lose 1.7 pounds of body weight, then you need to make that up. Okay, we start to feel the symptoms of dehydration. The mechanism of feeling thirsty kicks in at about 2%. And what can happen is we can work out, look at the scale and go, hey, I lost 3 pounds. You didn't lose 3 pounds. You sweated out 3 pounds of water that you need to replenish. It has nothing to do with burning fat, okay? Losing weight over a period of time, as opposed to losing weight when you exercise. Losing weight right when we exercise is losing water. The problem is exercise can dull our thirst, and thirst is really what we depend on to make us think that we need to take a drink. Part of what we can use, besides the symptoms that we're feeling, is we can look at our urine to see if we're dehydrated. So urine, if we're fully hydrated, should be clear. So I have an image here. So here we see very good, right? This is a good level of hydration. We don't see any color in the urine. We start to see a little bit of color. It's still pretty good, right? So light lemon sort of color. But once we start to look like apple juice, dehydrated, color of apple juice and darker, we need to be drinking more. So we are becoming very dehydrated, okay? And that's just our body's way. Why it gets darker is our body starts to reabsorb water when it gets this signal that we're dehydrated. So water is coming back into our blood instead of us peeing it out. So our urine starts to get more and more concentrated. So we have this thirst mechanism. So there's this little gland inside our brain. It's called the hypothalamus. And what it detects is if we have too much solute in our blood. So remember, solute is the stuff that's dissolved usually in water. So it detects that we have way too much of it, or means we have way too little water. So then we get this thirst signal, take a drink, right? And then that propels us to be thirsty. We take a drink. So now we have more water going into our blood that dilutes that solute, increases the water concentration, and we don't feel thirsty anymore. Okay. All right, symptoms of dehydration. So we can start to lose our ability to control our temperature. So we can start becoming a little overheated. We can fatigue easier, so exercise capacity goes down. 2%, like we said earlier, feeling of thirst, not feeling all that hungry. 3% of our body weight. So these numbers are just based on someone who's 150 pounds, but 3% of our body weight, increased pulse rate, higher body temperature. 5%. Now, my daughter and I talk about this sometimes because sometimes we will forget to drink, which is stupid, but sometimes we do. Some of the things that are common that I feel, because I might feel like I've got a big headache, I'm grumpy, and I'm really tired. And then I think back and I'm like, how much water did I have today? Oh, almost nothing. And then it's, okay, I better have a drink. So these symptoms remind me that I better have some water, okay? If it gets worse, your respiratory rate, so that's how much you breathe, goes up. Your blood volume gets smaller, so your heart has to work a little harder. And then we can start suffering from heat exhaustion and heat stroke, which you learned about during your first aid section. Okay, so prevention is the best cure. Better not to get dehydrated, just drink. So what can cause us to drink? Having a bottle that makes you feel like drinking, right? So make sure your disposable, or not disposable, reusable water bottle is one that you like. Easy access, keep it with you. And I noticed that with you guys in the class. A lot of you will have your water bottle with you. So you're not forgetting to drink. You look, oh yeah, I should have a drink right now, okay? Temperature fluid, usually not ice cold. Usually if it's less than ice cold, we'll drink it more. Although if it's a hot day outside, sometimes ice cold is refreshing, okay? So you want to choose a temperature of the fluid that works for you. Sometimes adding a little bit of sodium gives it a little bit of flavor. Flavored water, or setting a timer. If you're a person like me who just has a hard time remembering to take a drink, set a timer so every little while it goes off so you remember to take a few swallows of liquid. Okay. All right, so when we talk about sports and activities, so when we're doing recreation, so if we're going for a tournament of some sort, or we are going to be going for a run, or whatever that activity is that you're going to do, you should drink around 2 cups of water about 2 or 3 hours before, and then about a cup of water about 20 minutes before. So you're hydrated before you start. About a cup of water every 10 to 20 minutes of exercise. And then when you're done your activity, about a cup of water around no more than 30 minutes after the activity. And that keeps up or maintains. Now, how much we need, this is sort of typical, right? It's going to vary on so many things. How hard you're working, what the intensity is, how hot it is outside, how humid it is outside, your level of fitness, all of those things are going to have an impact on how much we sweat. Okay, overhydration. It's weird for us to think about drinking too much water, but drinking too much water can actually kill you, okay? So it's important to drink enough water so we don't become dehydrated. So I don't want to scare you off from drinking water. We have to drink water, but overhydration can be deadly. If you even just look at this of overhydration or water, I think it's called water toxicity, something like that. There's cases where people decided that they were going to have 2 gallons of water in one sitting. Sometimes it's a silly competition on Snapchat or whatever. That can kill you, okay? So there's a condition that's called exercise-associated hyponatremia. Now, remember, hypo means less than. Natra means sodium. So those of you who took Science 10, remember sodium symbol is Na. Na stands for natrium, which is the Latin word for sodium. So that's why that sodium, emia, is in the blood. So this means we don't have enough sodium in our blood. So the blood concentration of sodium is too low because we drank too much water. So we take in water, take in water, take in water. We've now diluted that sodium concentration to a point where it's becoming deadly and we can die, okay? Studies show the conditions not avoided by drinking sports drinks. So the sodium we're ingesting with a sports drink probably isn't going to eliminate this because we're taking a higher concentration of water in. So to avoid this, drink to replace lost fluids or drink to thirst, right? Don't over drink. So we'll just watch a quick little video on hyponatremia.
Water is amazing. It's necessary for life to exist, makes you healthier, and it's incredibly refreshing, especially after an intense workout. But is water intoxication a real thing? Can you drink too much water? We're often told to drink around 8 glasses of water a day to stay healthy, but the honest truth is that this specific number is somewhat arbitrary and no scientific research exists to support it. Regardless, we know water is incredibly important. In fact, every organism we know of requires water to survive. Not only does it help the human body to bring oxygen and nutrients to the cells, regulate body temperatures, and aid metabolism, but it flushes waste out of the body. Sweat out too much during a sporting event and you'll start to feel a bit woozy. 3 days without water and you likely won't survive. So how could such an essential substance hurt us? It all comes down to the cellular level. The water you drink has very few electrolytes in it, things like sodium or potassium, especially compared to your cells. The electrolytes in your cells allow your muscles and nerves to work properly and help to control blood pressure and blood volume. Without them, your body cannot function. Now, normally, the difference in electrolyte concentration inside and outside the cell wouldn't pose a problem because your kidneys flush out any excess water. However, the kidneys can only excrete fluid at a certain rate. This means that consuming a lot of water in a short period of time creates a large concentration difference. As a result, water is drawn into the cells in an attempt to dilute the concentration and even out the proportion of electrolytes, and this causes the cells to swell. The problem is, unlike other parts of your body, the brain literally has no room inside the skull for these newly plump cells. This results in extreme headaches and confusion, leading to seizures, comas, respiratory arrest, and even death. So should you be worried? Not likely. Cases of water intoxication are very rare, though they do happen in extreme circumstances. Close to 1/6 of marathon runners develop mild cases in their careers, with all endurance athletes at a higher risk. This is because under the extremes of athletic stress, the body attempts to conserve water. So not only are you taking more water in, you're peeing less out. Science says, though you're not likely to suffer from water intoxication, you should drink to your thirst. It's the best indicator. Don't forget, we have a new video out every day during the Olympics, but if you can't wait, head to CBC.
Okay. There. Okay. Let's go back to. Okay. So that's what hyponatremia is all about, okay? So we want to make sure we're not over drinking, but as long as you're drinking to your thirst or drinking to the conditions, you should be fine. Okay. So sports drinks. What do we need to know about sports drinks? So this is our Powerade and our Gatorade and those types of things that seem really popular because a lot of athletes are promoting those for our young people to drink. So what we hear about them is we've lost electrolytes, so we have to replace our electrolytes. So I always hear this word electrolyte bandied about, and we're just going to watch a video on what the heck does that even mean. Okay. Besides, I like this what's up dude guy.
Electrolytes are ionic minerals, which mean that they are minerals that have a positive or negative electrical charge. The 3 main electrolyte minerals are sodium, potassium, and chloride. Sodium helps regulate blood pressure and aid in nerve impulses and muscle contractions. Potassium helps regulate heartbeat, muscle and nerve cell functions, and helps maintain a healthy blood pH level. Chloride's main function is to help with fluid balance in the body. Your kidneys, along with several hormones, regulate electrolyte levels. Electrolytes are lost through sweat, urine, and feces. For people exercising more than 60 minutes, electrolyte loss can sometimes be a concern. However, in most people, electrolyte deficiency is rare. Many sports drinks are high in electrolytes, but they usually contain large amounts of added sugar or artificial sweeteners. A great way to replenish electrolytes is by consuming them through foods. Bananas, spinach, and avocados are high in potassium. Sodium and chloride, or salt, is added to many foods such as sauces and soups, making their replenishment easy to achieve. And that is the basics on electrolytes.
So the thing with this is, first of all, you don't have to have sports drinks unless you're doing a lot of activity after that 60-minute mark. And the second thing is, we can get our electrolytes from our food. So electrolyte is just a fancy way to be talking about ions. So if you took Science 10, you talked about ions. Those are just atoms with a charge, right? Those are our electrolytes. Okay, so let's move on here. And, all right, so sports drinks. What the benefit we get from sports drinks is if we are exercising longer than 60 minutes, they do have sugars in there that can help to replenish the lost energy we have. Because after we're going past 60 minutes, it's not just the water we've lost, we have energy. So it both rehydrates the body and replenishes the glucose so we don't get fatigued as easily. So we'll just watch a little thing on sports drinks. I told you we had lots of videos today. That one.
So there are many pros and cons to sports drinks, including they provide energy and they prevent dehydration. However, they also have a lot of calories and a lot of sugar. You should use sports drinks if you're participating in sports greater than 60 minutes in duration. Do not use Gatorade or Powerade or other sports drinks, for instance, if your sport lasts shorter than 60 minutes, and also just to carry around school with you on a daily basis. They have a lot of calories and a lot of sugar, and instead you should be focusing your attention on water. So if you are going to be drinking a sports drink for optimal sports performance, turn the label over and you want to look for 6 to 7% carbohydrate per serving. Energy drinks should never be used for hydration purposes under any circumstances. They have a lot of ingredients that claim to give you energy. If you're eating a well-balanced sports nutrition diet, then you won't need these energy to give you.
Okay. We will talk a bit about energy drinks a little bit later here. Whoops. So next, so that's our sports drinks. So those are like our Gatorades and Powerades. Now, so the nutrients that we get from those drinks, water, right? So we can replenish the water that we've lost by sweating during our activity and breathing out. They give us our carbohydrates. So after that 60 minutes, we're starting to deplete our carbohydrate stores. So it gives us a chance to add to that. Improves taste, so we are drinking more because it is important to hydrate. And then it has sodium and potassium. So those are the electrolytes that are really the big ones for us not wanting to lose. They get lost in our sweat, so it increases our desire to drink that. Now, you do not have to go out and spend a ridiculous amount of money to buy your Gatorade or Powerade if you are going to be doing an activity that's greater than 60 minutes. You can actually make your own. So this recipe I found online, and actually I went to a session that had a dietitian at it, and this is about what she recommended. So you have your water, then you add some of your fruit juice to the water, and then you add a little bit of salt and shake that up, and there's your sports drink at fractions of the cost of the one that you would buy in the store. Now on page 32 in your sports nutrition book, they do recommend, rather than orange juice, using a drink rather than a juice. And then the drink will have glucose in it as well. And glucose our body absorbs a lot faster than just the fructose if we just use a pure juice. So that would be up to you. That's something that you might want to research a little bit more, but pretty simple to make. And again, you only need this if you're going to be being really active for more than 60 minutes. Okay, energy drinks. I kind of cringe when I see students drinking these energy drinks. And I mean, this is not new to your generation. We had Jolt cola back when I was your age. Energy drinks contain huge amounts of caffeine and sugar. So really what happens is you get this huge energy boost and then this crash. So one energy drink can have 3 times how much you get in a can of Coke, or it's like a cup of coffee with 5 teaspoons of sugar in it. So we're just going to watch a quick little video on energy drinks here.
Energy drink companies are spending about $3 billion a year trying to convince athletes that all the caffeine and sugar they contain actually helps them in training and performance. The truth is that while those stimulants might make your heart race like you just stepped into the middle of the octagon, they're probably not going to help you a whole lot once the fight starts. The caffeine in most energy drinks is higher than what you'll find in coffee, but unlike hot coffee, you can slam energy drinks pretty quickly, which will end up making you jittery and screw up your sleep cycles. In case you didn't know, it's when you're deep asleep that you produce the most growth hormone and get stronger, so missing sleep isn't good. And there's more bad news. All that sugar is a huge crash after the initial long-term sugar can lead to weight gain, and can give you a caffeine addiction. When you exercise train, a little bit further than the electrolytes to replenish all this you sweat out. And then, or you can go with old-fashioned water. Drink addiction, do something that can.
Okay, so the only thing that he says at the end was sports drinks. Again, remember, they're not recommended unless you're doing your activity for longer than 60 minutes, okay? All right, so we'll go back to our PowerPoint here. I do have another video here. We're not going to watch that, but I thought it was pretty good, so I added it there. Okay, energy drinks consumption. So what can it do to us? It can make our blood pressure go up, and this is really a problem because when we're busy working out, we make our blood pressure go up because our heart's beating faster, right? If our blood pressure is already up because of that energy drink, and now we're putting more pressure on our blood vessels, we can actually cause damage to our blood vessels. Decreased sleep, right? So that's not good, like they said in the video, and heightened anxiety from having all of that caffeine. We start to get jittery, okay? Not appropriate before or after. High sugar is not balanced with the amount of electrolytes that you'll be losing, and high sugar content actually can reduce our ability to absorb water. Energy drinks can contain other additives, and they can actually, there are so many things in an energy drink, and I mean, I watched a million videos to try to find the one that I wanted to show you guys. There's a lot of them. Some of them are longer, like 5 or 6 minutes, but they have different compounds in them that are sort of caffeine-like compounds. Some of them could be sports enhancing, which means you could fail a doping test if you are an elite athlete. Okay, sweat. Why do we sweat? Well, we sweat because that's how our body cools itself, okay? We sweat when we work our muscles, when we metabolize more, right? As we metabolize, we're going through cellular respiration, we're releasing water when we're breathing out, we're sweating by working our muscles, our body temperature is going up. Sweat is mostly water, but we also have sodium and chlorine or chloride in our sweat as well. So it does taste salty. It can occur from exercise. We can sweat because it's hot outside, so we're cooling off that way, or there's some nerve stimulations that can make us sweat. How much we sweat really depends on our intensity, how hard we're working, how long we've been working out for, what the conditions are. If it's humid, we're going to sweat more. If it's hot, we're going to sweat more. How many clothes we're wearing, right? If we have a thick or thin layer, because our sweat's going to make us want to cool down. So if we wear a lot of clothes, we're going to sweat more. Degree of acclimatization, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Okay, so we're just going to talk about sweat rates. There is a way where you can calculate your sweat rate. So we're just going to watch. Now this one is, whoops, I didn't mean to click on that, sorry. This video, let's go over here. Close this one off. Oh, not that. There we go. This one here, it shows you how to calculate how much you sweat. Now this is done not with a metric system, it's imperial, but that's okay. You'll get the idea.
The sweat rate calculation is a useful tool to determine individual fluid needs during exercise, practice, and games to delay fatigue, ensure maximum performance, and prevent dehydration. The goal is not to lose weight during exercise. Any weight loss during exercise is likely due to fluid losses, which means you are not adequately hydrated, and it may result in a decline in performance. To calculate your sweat rate, weigh yourself before and after exercise. Also, keep track of how much fluid you consume during the activity. Subtract your post-activity weight in pounds from your pre-activity weight to determine weight lost during exercise. Be sure to remove sweaty clothes before taking your post-activity weight. In our example, this athlete lost 1.5 pounds during exercise. Next, take the amount of weight lost and multiply by 16 to determine the sweat loss in ounces. Add in the amount of fluid that was consumed during exercise. In this example, the athlete drank 12 ounces during their 1.5-hour workout. Divide the total by the duration of exercise in hours. This number represents the amount of fluid you should consume per hour of exercise. You can further divide your fluid recommendation by 4 to calculate a target amount to drink every 15 minutes of exercise.
Just want to go back 1 second here. So really what we're doing is we're weighing ourselves before the exercise and after. You want to wear the same clothes, so best to do it in your underwear. Underwear before, underwear after, and see how much right after the activity that you weigh, so how much you've lost. And then you multiply that by 16 ounces because that tells you how much you've lost in ounces. Then we add that to how many ounces we've drank, so we have to record how much we've drank while we've been doing our exercise. So the amount we've drank plus the amount we've lost, that's the total amount of water that we've sweated out, okay? So now we divide that by how many hours we've worked out. That gives us how many ounces. And then if we divide that by 4, we've taken that hour and divided it into 4 parts. So every 15 minutes, that's about how much that you would lose sweating. So this individual, 6 ounces, that is 3/4 of a cup, right? Which means every 15 minutes, they should be consuming about 3/4 of a cup of liquid.
A target amount to drink every 15 minutes of exercise. An easy estimation is 1 gulp equals 1 ounce. In this scenario, the athlete should aim for 6 gulps of fluid every 15 to 20 minutes of exercise for optimal performance and hydration status. Keep in mind that sweat rates will vary from one athlete to another. If you have questions about how to properly calculate your own sweat rate,
and of course, sweat rates are going to vary also depending on environmental conditions, right? How hard you're working. This is sort of if you're doing the same activity every day, how much you're sweating. All right, so this whole thing, degree of acclimatization. So when we talk about this term, acclimatization, it's basically training for the conditions of the competition. So we see this a lot with Olympic athletes. So for example, when the Summer Olympics were in Brazil, well, that's different environmental conditions than a lot of people live in and train in. So the athletes actually go to the Olympic site usually 2 to 4 weeks before to start training in those conditions so their body is used to those conditions so they can maximize their abilities in those conditions. So if we have heat acclimation, right, if it's hotter than what we're used to, it increases our body's response to the heat, which means we're going to end up sweating more to cool more, so our sweat rate goes up. When we think about that in hydration, we need to accommodate for that by drinking more water. So we'll just watch a quick video on this here.
speak with a member of your sports medicine team.
Hi, my name is Brett Singer, and I'm a sports dietitian from Memorial Hermann Ironman Sports Medicine Institute. And today we're talking about heat acclimatization. Acclimatization is the scenario where we're now training in that environment specifically. So right now we're in Houston, Texas, and so it's hot, it's humid, and so when we train outside and get accustomed to that environment, now we are acclimatizing. So why do I bring up this particular topic? Well, so football season is coming and practice is about to begin, and so now is the time, and even probably prior to this, is the time to start getting acclimatized to that environment. So it typically takes about 10 to 14 days for an individual to acclimatize. So some things that you need to factor in is you need to get accustomed to training at the right time of day. So just because you're training in the morning when it's hot and humid doesn't quite mean the same thing as if your practice is going to take place at 1 or 2 o'clock. You want to try and get accustomed to that temperature, to that specific environment. You typically need to build up to the point where you're able to sustain about 90 minutes or so of exercise in that temperature. Once you've been able to do that for about 10 to 14 days, we're now considered acclimatized. So this is typically a process that you want to start about 3 to 4 weeks out in advance of when you're going to be really training in it or exercising in a strenuous environment. So the practice itself that you do will certainly help acclimatize for the games, but what I try and suggest is that athletes start to adjust and practice before their actual team practices begin, so that way once they do occur, their body's a bit more accustomed to it and they can handle the heat.
There. Okay, just a couple more slides left here, guys. Okay. So muscle cramps, last thing we're talking about here, often associated with dehydration, but we can also get cramps when we overexert our muscles, when we have lost too much fluid, when we're not conditioned properly, or we have an imbalance in our electrolytes. Muscle cramps can happen when we push ourselves to the point of exhaustion. So things to help us avoid it, making sure we're drinking enough, stretching before and after activity, and then massaging can help. So sometimes using a roller and those types of things, the foam rollers. Okay. So preventing muscle cramps. So there's 4 nutrients that are associated with getting muscle cramps. So if we don't have enough water, right, we want to make sure we have enough water before, during, and after exercise. When we think about calcium, right, can lead to muscle contractions, so that can lead to muscle cramps when we don't have enough. So low-fat dairy, a couple low-fat yogurts a day, a low-fat milk. Potassium-rich foods. So in the one video they talked about avocado, bananas, and spinach, right? And then sodium. So if we're lacking in sodium, we can increase our sodium. There's lots of stuff that has sodium. Our sports drinks, of course, salted pretzels, a lot of stuff that we consume has sodium in it. Okay, so that's it for hydration. So hydrating the athlete. So I shared a worksheet with you. So your worksheet, the number 2 one for fueling the athlete is due tomorrow. And the hydrating the athlete is due on Monday. And remember, you need to take a day in order to log your fluid intake for that day. All right. And you will have a quiz Tuesday through Wednesday. And we have about 2 more sections to do, and we are almost done, guys. So keep pushing. And if you have any questions, just ask. And other than that, we are done for the day. All right, we will see you Monday. Have a great day.